We've got a massive fight coming up here in the main event, UFC 288, Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo. Man, this is something else. As I'm handicapping this fight and as I'm breaking it down, I'm asking myself a million questions about all these different scenarios. And one of the things that I asked myself was, if this fight was taking place right after Henry Cejudo defeated Marlon Moraes, how would I feel about it? Would it be any different than I feel today? And, I don't really mean like back then, if the fight would have happened that many years ago. What I mean is if that Henry Cejudo, right, still coming right off of that fight, not the guy with the 3-year layoff, but that Henry Cejudo was fighting the Aljamain Sterling of today, not the Aljamain Sterling of that time, right? So if that Henry Cejudo and this Aljamain Sterling were fighting, would I feel any differently about it? Would I come to a different conclusion? Do I think they would match up any differently? And I think that's an interesting thing, right? Because what that refers to is what would have happened in this 3-year period. Now, it's easy to look at Henry Cejudo and think the guy's been off for 3 years. He's going to have ring rust. Super real thing. I know you look at a guy like Dominic Cruz and he says ring rust doesn't exist. It's all mental. Of course it's all mental. Of course it's all in your head. But that doesn't mean it's not a real thing. It affects so many people that we have to refer to it as a real thing. It's a phenomenon. Now, the fact that there are certain guys that it really doesn't seem to affect, all I can say is, man, my hat's off to them. That just means that they can, through training, they're likely to be able to click the switch and put themselves in the mindset and try to recreate the feelings that they feel on fight night. So when they actually get out there on fight night, those feelings aren't brand new, because that's really all it's about. It's just being unfamiliar to the situation, feeling a little nervous or maybe overwhelmed, or maybe all of a sudden the lights feel a little bright and it's not quite as intense as you remembered it, or maybe there's actually more intensity because there's more media with you making this comeback versus than there used to be, right? So whatever the case may be, I personally believe ring rust is a real thing because we've seen it affect far too many people. So we have to acknowledge it as a phenomenon. So that's the one thing that we think about going back for this 3-year gap, right? Boom, boom. We're gonna be dealing potentially, or more likely than not, we'll be dealing with some ring rust. But here's the other thing we got to remember. Why does ring rust occur? And when you think about it, right, that's what we really need to break down. And I think it has to do a lot of times with being out of shape. No matter how much you train, no matter how much you're trying to stay dialed in, I think a lot of guys find it difficult to get back to that level of conditioning, to get back to that level of shape. So then when they come back into the ring, their footwork's a little off, their timing's a little off, they need to kind of recuperate and get used to stuff. So being out of shape would be one. Another one would just be your mental mindset. Another one would be, has the game passed you by, depending on how long you've been out? Now, the thing is, I don't think any of that's going to apply to Henry Cejudo because he's specifically been staying so involved. The man's been in there working as a coach, training with Davison Figueiredo, John Jones, Zhang Wei Li. There were so many people that he's been working with over time that I think he's just kept his finger right on the pulse of the sport. I think he's been so active. And the thing about coaching is when you have to sit down and actually explain something to somebody else, it makes you better. Right? That's like the secret sauce. That's the magic to the whole thing. On the one hand, you think of teacher and teach, right? Student and the pupil, or teacher and the pupil. So when you think about it, that you're thinking the teacher is the one who's imparting all the wisdom to the person that is being taught. Totally normal, and that's actually what happens. But there's actually a little bit of a reverse mechanism as well, okay? And that happens because the person who has to explain the concept well enough and thoroughly enough and understand it, really get their arms around it, for them to be able to explain something and actually teach it to another person, they have to own the knowledge. And when they own the knowledge, they become better with it. It's just a weird little thing that happens, right? So I believe that happened with Henry Cejudo, just because that he's been doing it for years now. And you can see the way that he communicates with people. Like when you see these little clips of the way he's talking to guys, and you see the way that guys talk about him and the way that he benefits their training camps and benefits their outlook on stuff. Like Henry Cejudo is no slouch, man. I mean, dude, I'm super high on this guy in the sense of like one of the greatest combat athletes of all time. And I know that may seem like an exaggeration, or there may be people who want to doubt it. And there's always people who dismiss the lighter weight guys as being able to really make a claim for things. But dude, I hold that gold medal in wrestling, that Olympic gold medal in wrestling, with such high esteem. I mean, anybody who's ever competed in high school wrestling or college wrestling knows just how difficult it is, man. Just how much of a grind it is. Like, it's so brutal. This man went and won an Olympic gold. At that time period, he was the absolute best in the world. Then he transitions over to MMA and wins the belt in 2 different weight divisions. Defeats Demetrius Johnson, a man who is phenomenal in his own right. Like, come on, dude. How can you take anything away from Henry Cejudo? How can you knock anything he's done? Yeah, I mean the dude's cringy. And back in the day, I don't even really think that applies so much anymore. Back when they called him the king of cringe, but it's like whatever, man. This dude has mastered the craft. He's so good at what he does. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to lose to Aljo, right? Because Aljo was no bum. Look, I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't really sold on dude. And then when I saw that first fight against, just watching him over time, then he gets that first fight against Petr Yan, and I'm like, everything I thought was right. Like he's a good fighter. He's an above average fighter, and he's got, good wrestling and phenomenal back control and all those things, but he's just not going to be able to be the best in the world. Like there's just whatever it is, I gave that to his striking. I'm like, I don't think his striking is good enough. I'm not the biggest fan of his takedowns and this and that. But then he comes back in that rematch, dude, and he pulls it out. Legitimately pulls it out and gets the win. And I felt like it was one of those scenarios, man, where this dude instantly became 30% better as soon as you strap the belt around his waist. Like he just recognized, like, I'm the man now. I need to go out there and perform like the man does. And he went out there and he won, dude. And he's got some things going for him. Don't get me wrong. Like that control, right? Black belt under Matt Serra and that back, particularly that back control he has, the way he locks up that body triangle and gets those chokes in. Phenomenal. The man's rear naked choke is something else. And make no mistake about it, should he find himself in a position where he gets Henry Cejudo's back, it'll be trouble all day for Henry. Right? I don't know if he's going to be able to get up from it, if he's going to be able to reverse the position, flip around so that he ends up in top control. I don't know if he'll... As long as he isn't hurt, I feel confident saying he'll probably be able to adequately defend against the rear naked choke because Henry's such an athlete. He's so strong. He's so well trained. He'll be making all the right moves. So provided he isn't already dazed or something like that, we've seen a lot of guys be able to fend off the rear naked choke for minutes. If that happens in the third or, it's only a minute or two into the round, we've seen guys be able to defend it off from Aljo before. So it's reasonable to believe that Henry would be able to defend it off as well, but he's absolutely going to lose the round. He's going to be getting beat up from the back if he doesn't find a way out of it. And not many guys do. You don't see Aljo get locked in that body triangle from having a guy's back and then find a way out of it, right? Just typically not the case. But the key is, will Henry find himself in that spot, right? Because here's the thing. Aljo's got this weird striking on the feet, uses great kicks and his distance and his length because he's big for the division. I love that front kick that he uses right up the middle. All great stuff, right? And we've seen Henry get worked from kicks before. The first Demetrius Johnson fight, or was it the second one? The second Demetrius Johnson fight when he was really getting worked with the kicks, and early on against Marlon Rice. Dude, go back and watch that fight and look at Henry Cejudo's shins and his calves after the first round. Man, he was getting smashed, dude. They just looked like hamburger. Just raw meat, all pink and red, just nasty looking, right? I mean, Marlon Rice was just tearing him up, which just goes to show how much of a savage Henry Cejudo is, dude, to come back from that, to come back from just getting absolutely pounded on and beat for a round and a half maybe, and then to find those knees, to find that right hand, and to come back through with it. And that's the thing, right? That's the thing. So Aljo's got the kicks, but I believe 100% that Henry Cejudo has better hands. And I think that what we've seen from these past fights, particularly this last one with Marlon Rice, is that he understands how to make adjustments at the highest level. And he understands that he's going to need to get inside of those kicks. He can't stay at the kicking range. He needs to get to the punching range. And when he does, I think it's going to be trouble all day long for Aljo. I think Henry Cejudo is much faster, much more explosive and quicker at not only closing the distance, but also his hand speed. Once he gets inside, I think he's going to be able to get his hands off really quickly. I think he's really good at shooting straight shots. I mean, look at what he did against Wilson Hayes. Look at those right hands that he landed to turn the tide against Marlon Rice. Henry Cejudo's hands are very good, and I'm sure that they're going to come out and actually be better. Right? We haven't seen them in 3 years. They're going to come out and they're going to be better. I think he's going to have a few little tricks of the trade, so to speak, that are going to be better. I don't think Aljo's going to be able to take him down. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that Henry's going to go out and take Aljo down. He might. I think he can. That's what the Olympic gold medal means. When you got that sitting on the wall at your house, that means you can take guys in your weight division. That means you can take guys down. So I think if he wants to, he'll be able to take Aljo down. Maybe not like 100% or nothing like that, but I also think that in the grappling exchanges, Henry is no slouch. A lot of times we see Aljo win grappling exchanges. That's how he gets the guy's backs. He'll even do it from a standing position, right? The human backpack. There's a reason they call him that. Awfully tough to get to that spot against a man that wrestles like Henry Cejudo. So if you looked at me and you said that this was going to be a kickboxing match, I'm going with Henry. I think at distance, at the kicking range, we're going to see a lot of success from Aljo, but I don't know if he's going to be able to maintain that kicking range, right? I don't know if he's got the power that he's going to be able to keep Henry Cejudo off of him, right? Because that's the other thing. Aljo's at his best when he goes forward, when he's able to pressure guys and keep them on their back foot, and then he's able to mix in the takedowns with this kind of weird, little bit unorthodox striking technique and angles that he uses and stuff, and it keeps guys guessing. So he's not necessarily the fastest, and he's pretty strong, but maybe he's not necessarily the strongest. And, his technique's good, but it's not great. But he's able to make all these things work and have it happen because he's got the unorthodox flair to it, whereas Henry doesn't. But I don't think Henry's going to need it. And I think that with Henry coming forward and applying the pressure, which is being more aggressive, which is what I expect him to do, I think that's going to take a lot away from Aljo's game as well. And then if we look at the cardio issue, we've seen Aljo fade a little bit before in that first fight that he had with Petr Yan. I don't know. I think Henry's an absolute monster, man. I don't think his cardio is going to fade. And maybe Aljo won't as well. But if I had to look at the cardio issue as it currently stands, and from what we've seen, I'm going to end up giving an edge later on in those championship rounds. I'm going to go with Henry Cejudo, man. So long story short, man, you look at the lines on this one, it's basically an even money fight. We've got Henry Cejudo as a favorite by the slightest of margins, minus 115, maybe minus 105, something along those lines. But I'm taking Henry in this one. I think he's going to come out. They're going to be strapping the belt around him again. I think he's going to come out with the victory, and the man's going to look phenomenal when he does it, And now we've already heard him talk about moving up and fighting Alexander Volkanovski at 145. This dude is insane. So it'll be fascinating to see, man, not only what happens to this fight, but how he looks and how each man looks going into it, to kind of trying to determine what's next. So, let me know what you guys think. Am I missing something? Is the ring rust going to play on him? Is Aljo got some tricks up his sleeve that I'm not really accounting for? Let me know what you guys think.